Do you keep missing shots that you know you should have hit in Marvel Rivals? I have, and I keep doing, and it has been bothering me since the beta opened. And while I couldn't put my finger on why that is, thankfully, somebody else, that being Revens1405 on Reddit, figured it out. So let's go over what's different about the aim in Marvel Rivals and what you need to do to fix it. So let's just dive into it. So what is the actual problem? Well, simply put, your shots do not always go where you're aiming. You can be perfectly tracking somebody or perfectly lining up your shots and have it be a miss. You can be aiming completely off and still have it be a hit and you'll still get a kill. This weird effect can be felt across all ranges, but is most noticeable in close range because the issue becomes very dramatic when you are really close range. And it's especially noticeable if using shotguns or abilities or any melee characters, because obviously you're going to be extremely close range. And if you don't adjust accordingly, you'll miss so many melee shots or shotgun shots that you know you should have hit in the first place. So why is this? When you shoot, obviously your bullets need to go from somewhere to somewhere. They can't just appear out of nowhere. They can't come from the center of your screen as they would with a first-person shooter game, because then you're gonna be able to look around corners and shoot around corners. So instead, the bullets go from your character's hitbox to where your crosshair is pointing. These are two independent lines or pieces of logic operating at the same time, independent from each other and slightly disconnected from each other. Thanks to this, if there's a wall in the way of your character, this means that you will not shoot at your targets because there's a wall in the way between your character and the crosshair, and you will instead see a red icon highlighting that, hey, you can't shoot here. So these two imaginary lines between your character's hitbox and the crosshair will have a point where they line up perfectly. But seeing as you always are looking over the right side of your character's shoulder, it will always have a slight bias where your shots will lead to the left, as they would need to cross from the left side, that being your character, and then towards where your crosshair currently is. But honestly, it seems to be inaccurate in more cases or more ranges than it ends up being accurate. And of course, like I said, the most egregious example of this is when you are really up close to an enemy, where they will be all the way up in between your character's hitbox and the crosshair. And if they are somewhere between your character's hitbox and the crosshair, you'll see just how bad this effect can be, because the bullet will leave your hitbox and go towards the crosshair and end up hitting the enemy on the way without ever going where you're actually aiming. So if you aim right on top of the enemy, it might just end up being a miss. And I don't know about you guys, but as somebody who likes shooting at things and having my bullets go where I'm pointing my weapon, this is kind of unacceptable. This also may be one of the reasons why we still don't have an FOV slider in the game, because the closer you get to the crosshair, so farther away from your character, the more dramatic this effect becomes, and the farther away you get from your character and the crosshair, so the more you back out, the less noticeable it gets. I'm not a fan of it. So what can NetEase do? Before I explain how you can adjust your own gameplay to compensate for this issue, I just want to throw a possible suggestion out for NetEase. As I understand it as a developer, when the shots have to come from both the character and third-person crosshair in a third-person shooter, you have to make a decision on which one should be the priority. Right now, Marvel Rivals seems to have the model take priority, which means that it is the most important that the bullets go from your character towards the crosshair. Not to the crosshair, but towards the crosshair. And in most modern third-party shooters, the crosshair is the one that takes a priority, where the shots always line up with where your crosshair is pointing rather than lining up where your model is pointing or where the bullets will be traveling from the model. Now, if the crosshair takes priority, this would mean that you can shoot around corners, right? But this is a problem that has been solved before. In order to fix this, you can put a check in place between the model and where you are aiming, because I mean, you still have these two imaginary lines, right? And if there is something in the way of the model, then the bullets won't hit the crosshair's target. So what you're doing is, instead of having the bullets go from the model, the bullet calculation use the model's line of sight as a guide rather than the actual source of the bullets, which just makes it much easier to be a lot more accurate. But whether that fix or any other fix will be implemented will be up to time and obviously the developers, but in the meantime, there is a way for you to adjust and start hitting more shots yourself. And it's honestly really simple. In almost all ranges, if not all ranges, make a habit of aiming to the right of your target. As long as your target is in between the crosshair and your character, then the shot will always lead slightly to the left, which you can fix by aiming to the right. And as I said, the closer your target is, you will need to aim farther and farther to the right. I also want to mention that while the original poster was really just talking about aiming to the left or to the right, this effect goes for any direction. It's also very noticeable if you are underneath somebody and you're aiming upwards, because now you don't only need to compensate by pulling to the right, but if you are below them and you are aiming up, this imaginary line not only has to travel from the left towards your crosshair, but at the same time, it needs to travel from your character that's farther down upwards towards the crosses. So there's one horizontal line being off and one vertical line being off at the same time. Now this issue is not as prevalent unless you're playing up close to enemies or you're playing a very tiny character up against huge characters such as Rocket Raccoon versus say Groot or Magneto. But it does happen. You can also kind of feel it if you're fighting any enemy who is vertical to you. So let's say they're flying above your head or just jumping towards you. My point is, you really should be aware of it. It's also exacerbated if you like going for headshots, because most people have a very large chest hitbox, and if you are very small, you will not only have a hard time hitting headshots to begin with, but the chest hitbox will soak up almost all of the headshots that you're going for. So if you are aiming from below an enemy and you have to aim upwards to hit their head, you actually need to aim slightly above their model to have the line from your character actually hit their head. My best suggestion in learning how to adjust for this is getting a hang of it in the practice range. Just run up to a target or dummy and start shooting on the right side. You can even see just how bad it gets, and you can kind of try to reprogram your brain on how to adjust for it. Play around a little bit with the ranges, play around a little bit with the angles, and try to get comfortable, because this is a pretty big deal when it comes to actually hitting your shots. And I mean, just being aware of this, in addition to this video kind of explaining how exactly it works, should hopefully give you a better idea on how to visualize it and actually be able to make these adjustments consciously or even subconsciously as well. So I hope that this video will help you get an idea on how you can work around a pretty common problem in certain third-person shooters. But anyways, that should give you a good idea on how the aiming works in Marvel Rivals and why you probably have been missing a lot of shots that you shouldn't have. And personally, I think I subconsciously have picked up on this myself, but actually knowing about it will definitely make my accuracy go up by quite a lot. So again, huge props to Remens1405 for finding and highlighting this issue. And if you guys want to stay in the know about Marvel Rivals, both for the beta and any later releases, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Also, if you guys want to chat about this while I'm live, you can come over to YouTube Live or to my twitch.tv/Ottr and we can talk about it in the chat. So I hope to see you guys there. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.